The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Good evening, and welcome to the May 2024 edition of For the Love of Words. I'm your co-host, John Holgerson, here this evening with the poet Ben Berman. Ben Berman is the author of 3 books of poems and the collection of essays, Writing While Parenting, a 2023 Times Literary Supplement Best Book of the Year. He has won the Peace Corps Award for the Best Book of Poetry, has been shortlisted twice for the Massachusetts Books Award, and has received awards from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, New England Poetry Club, and Somerville Arts Council. He's been teaching for 25 years and currently teaches creative writing classes at Brooklyn High School. He lives in the Boston area with his wife and 2 daughters, and it's my pleasure to welcome Ben to For the Love of Words this evening.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you, Ben. So I will start, like I do on so many of these interviews, by asking the poet, what brought you to poetry? What was the first connection you had with poetry?
It was probably in high school when I was too small to really be an athlete on the field with most of my friends. So I would sit on the sidelines and feel inspired by my favorite poet, Weird Al Yankovic, and would rewrite lyrics to famous songs to make fun of all my friends on the soccer field. And there was a great joy in just playing with language and being clever with words and coming up with rhymes and finding a way to use humor to playfully mock my friends.
And did this make you popular among your friends?
Yes and no. I would say popular and unpopular at the same time.
Besides Al, Weird Al, who were the poets, the more traditional poets, who inspired you as you got into poetry?
Yeah, when I was in college, I was very lucky to take a few creative writing classes with a poet named Greg Janinkian, who really inspired me and introduced me, even in the very first class, to some of my favorite poets. So Stephen Dunn, William Matthews, Lawrence Robb. Eventually, I would fall in love with Terrence Hayes and Ross Gay, Elizabeth Bishop, certainly Robert Frost. So it's sort of, traveled a long way. But the first poets, I think, were often writing about domesticity with incredible insight. And I think that has certainly encouraged my own interest in thinking about the life in front of me as material for poetry.
Okay. I know that you have written many commentaries or columns or articles about writing, and I'd like to talk about one in particular that appeared about 18 months ago on the WBUR website. And the actual commentary that you were writing was about the utilization by high school students of artificial intelligence and how that caused you some concern about their utilization of their own creativity as opposed to the artificial existence of it. But in that commentary, you talked about a theory of creativity that was written about by Teresa Ambele. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. And there were 3 components of that. Craft, and please correct me if I go astray here. The strong understanding of craft, the ability to think creatively, and the intrinsic task motivation. So the first 2 are somewhat obvious, or can be obvious, from a writer's work. And certainly you check off those 2 boxes in your work without any question. But my question to you is, what is the intrinsic task motivation for you when you sit down in the morning with your 3rd cup of coffee that I saw that you wrote about? And begin the process of writing?
Yeah, I think it's a deep question, and I think that that theory of creativity has very much impacted the way that I think about writing and also the teaching of writing. And there's actually a fourth component as well, but it's outside of the writer or artist control, which is just that they're in an environment that fosters creativity. So a lot of times, there's all this interplay that happens that will determine how we sort of behave. I think that in terms of the larger question of writing, my life is fairly busy. I'm a full-time teacher. I have 2 young kids. And so it's not easy to find time to write. I think that the world is often designed to, stop us from doing the things that we love to do. It's so easy to not do them.
Right.
For me in particular, writing requires great discipline. I wake up at 3 a.m. Almost every day of my life and write for 3 hours before waking my daughters up and starting to get them ready to go for school. So I think that the thing that drives me more than anything is this incredible joy of the activity itself. And it's not the extrinsic motivation of a result that's going to win an award or some sort of outcome. It's certainly not money, right?
Right.
The idea of intrinsic motivation is that the activity itself brings you great pleasure. And I think for me, I spent many years traveling when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and living abroad for a long time with the Peace Corps and then other programs. And there was this incredible freedom and excitement to it. And, nowadays I rarely travel. I'm very domestic, very routine-based. But writing sort of fulfills that love for adventure, for exploring new territories, and for the incredible freedom, right? As a teacher and as a parent, I think I spend most of my life serving others and facilitating other people's experiences. But there's this central me, I think, that when I write, I'm able to get in touch with, right? So, I think when we think about why we're doing any activity, its relevance, its purpose, the autonomy to direct it in whatever way you can, those are the things that drive us, right? I also think that, more specifically, whenever I'm writing, I'm often tinkering with language and I have no idea where the poem or story is going to go. Mm-hmm. And often it will go in directions that soon enough aren't thrilling or charged. And I often have to revisit, the sense of what are the most pressing needs right now that I need to be figuring out or exploring. And that often helps me figure out where the poem wants to go.
Okay.
So, that sense of that every poem is the opportunity for revelation, right? For an opportunity to, as Frost said, learn or know what you didn't know that you know.
Right.
Right. That's what sort of drives me, is that constant revealing of these hidden, understandings of truth and self.
Now, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say that besides the joy that you find in writing, that there's also, you find in yourself a need to write?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love the introversion of writing, right? There's such joy in deep contemplation and discovery. And so both mental exercise, spiritual exercise, physical exercise are a great way of just, creating this depth within yourself and your body. So, sometimes when you're doing something out of routine, it can feel like a routine. And sometimes it can sort of bridge itself into a ritual. So it's sort of a routine with the spiritual,
right,
meaning to it. And I think that sometimes when you're just doing things, you're not even aware of it. But when you don't do it for a few days, you realize just how central it is to keeping you grounded in who you are.
Now, will you be reading this evening from Writing While Parenting?
That's my hope, yes.
Yeah. It's my hope as well. I had the great pleasure of hearing you read from that work a few months ago at the Plymouth venue, Poetry, the Art of Words. So I'm looking forward to hearing you read from it again tonight.
Thank you.
Do you have any readings upcoming that you would like the audience to know about?
Not readings per se, but in the end of July and early August, I'll be teaching some poetry classes at the Cape Cod Writers Center. They have this awesome conference, and so I'll be one of the faculty members there.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, I can assure the audience, based upon my own experience in hearing you read your work, that it is definitely a pleasure and a thought-provoking experience, as well as a humorous one, which you have a wonderful ability to incorporate humor into your work.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much for coming tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. What a wonderful series. Well, thank you so much, John, for inviting me here. It is such an honor. I'm going to read a few pieces from a book of essays that I wrote about poetry. It's called Writing While Parenting. And I became interested in it to explore the overlaps and connections between writing poetry and raising kids. And the book follows my adventures raising two daughters from the times that they're 1 and 3 up until the times that they're 6 and 8. So I'm going to start with one called Playing with Matches. We're late for school, and my 5-year-old is getting undressed. We gotta go, I say. Sorry, she says. My underwear doesn't match my sweater. Does it really matter? I say. She looks up from the hamper, raises a single eyebrow, then continues digging through the dirty laundry. And although I'm tempted to point out that no one will ever know whether the trimming of her underwear matches the flowers on her sweater, that chances are she's going to take off her sweater the second she gets to school, as a poet, I understand the importance of hidden patterns. A poem is an instant of lucidity in which the entire organism participates, writes Charles Simic. And there's something about metaphor and conversation with form, imagery playing off diction that feels essential to the workings of a poem. And yet I'm wary of anything that fits too neatly together, that feels too tightly orchestrated. Earlier this week, my 5-year-old pirouetted herself into a wall. And hearing her cry, my 2-year-old came running over to the rescue. Put these on your boo-boo, she said, handing her a box of tampons. There is something about disjunction that is at the heart of both poetry and parenting. It speaks to the way that our lives are filled with interruptions and non sequiturs. How my wife and I discuss the stresses of our jobs between bouts of shaking the sillies out. Last night, as I was putting my daughters to sleep, my 5-year-old said, I love you so much, it makes my heart burst. And then my 2-year-old announced from the other side of the room, I love you so much, and I like to play with toads. And I was reminded of why I wake up so early every morning to read and write poems, with all their imprecise meanings and tangling of tones. This next one's called Labor of Love. When I first started telling my friends that my wife and I were pregnant with our older daughter, my wife would shoot me a look to remind me that only one of us technically was pregnant. So I can't help but feel the pettiest of joys in the fact that my 4-year-old happens to believe that while her older sister was born in the most conventional of ways, uterus, birth canal, she somehow managed to emerge out of my stomach. Furthermore, every time I tell some story about something that happened back in college, my younger daughter will nod her head and say, yeah, I remember that because I was in your belly back then. According to my 4-year-old, not only did she gestate inside my womb for the typical 3 trimesters, but she has always been inside of me. I can't help but see this as a metaphor for writing. Most poets write the same poem over and over, writes Richard Hugo, and no matter how much I try to vary my subjects, I always end up tackling the same concerns, delving into the same lifelong mysteries that have always been burning inside of me, as though every poem is leading me closer to finding my essential face. To complicate the matter, though, ever since my 4-year-old watched Happy Feet last year, she has been convinced that at some point during the pregnancy, I removed her from my womb and placed her inside of a penguin egg until it was time to hatch. And ridiculous as that sounds, this too feels like an apt metaphor for writing. Poetry might very well be a labor of love, but it is not an active labor. We cannot push our poems out. Instead, we must let them incubate, churn around below the threshold of consciousness, as Mihai Csikszentmihalyi writes, while simultaneously guarding and nurturing them as they develop, until they are too restless for the brittle containers of our design, until they are itching to break free and chip their way out. And what a delicate delight then to watch these miraculous little things waddle away from us as we pray from the depths of our being that they survive the cold of this world on their own. This next piece is called The Trouble with Transitions. My daughters were supposed to be getting ready for bed when I walked into their room and found my 4-year-old naked, kneeling on all fours with her butt in the air, her older sister slapping her bottom. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Playing the drums," my older daughter said. And although part of me was relieved to see my 4-year-old finally using her butt for something other than a wind instrument, I immediately stopped the show and escorted her to the shower. It got me thinking, though, about the difficulty of transitions in both parenting and writing. I am often amazed by how hard it is to get my daughters into the shower, and then, once they're in the shower, how hard it is to get them out. And this feels eerily similar to the challenge of making my way from one stanza or paragraph to the next. More often than not, this is a result of how I go about putting a draft together in the first place, which typically involves a series of false starts and frenzied free writes, frantic late-night calls to my muse, and failed attempts at remembering the epiphany I had in middle of the night. Before I know it, I've amassed a collection of undercurrents and overhauls that refuse to be shaped into a coherent narrative. At best, the writing process becomes a matter of culling through draft after draft after draft, then pulling my favorite passages and trying to create passageways. Every finished piece of writing only seems seamless. What makes transitions particularly difficult for me, though, is that despite my love of psychic shifts, I get so easily overwhelmed by contradictions. I wonder if this is what makes transitions hard for my daughters as well. They're rocking out to Hairspray in the bedroom, singing at the top of their lungs about how no one can stop the music, how no one can stop the beat, and then suddenly I barge in, stop both the music and the beat, and demand that they start their bedtime routines. What else is there to do when faced with the dizzying disconnects of this world, but find a butt and start drumming? Try to remember, as Roxane Gay writes, that nothing makes sense, but still, somehow, there is a rhythm. This next one is called Why Finding the Right Image Can Be So Challenging. And I really love imagery in poetry. I love exploring all the possible links that I can make when I find an image. I'm often inspired by Whitman's section 6 of Song of Myself, where he has a child ask, "What is a blade of grass?" and then just goes through a cataloging of images of what that blade of grass could look like, and thinking about the links of each intonation. So I try to be inspired by this one to think about my graying hair. Why finding the right image can be so challenging. I place the 6-pack of beer on the counter. The clerk looks up at me, then down at the beer, then back up at me, then leans in and says, "I thought I was going to have to ID you when you first walked in, but now that you're up close, I can see all the gray hairs on your head." I'm not sure whether to be flattered that he thinks I look 20 years younger than I actually am, or upset that he's noticed that I'm starting to go gray. Although after I get home and examine my head in the mirror, I realize that there is something about the word gray that feels off, as though it is too generic a word to capture the intricate blending of complementing colors sprouting from my head. Later at dinner, I ask my wife and daughters if they will help me find a more evocative, surprising, and accurate description of my hair. My wife suggests that my head looks like the love child of a panda and koala bear, but my 7-year-old seems downright offended that my wife would compare me to animals that are so adorably cute. What about storm clouds, I offer, or campfire smoke? Both of these images seem somehow accurate in terms of color, and I like that they speak to the impending dangers of a midlife crisis. But there's something too billowy about their presence. The grays on my head aren't about to be blown away, and I need an image that is more accurately textured. Salt and pepper, my wife suggests. That one's familiar, of course, and I kind of like it, but it feels imprecise. My hair is mostly the color of pepper with a little dash of salt mixed in. Pepper and salt would be more accurate, but even then, the secondary meaning of the word pepper seems to suggest that it is the black peppered about. Part of the challenge is that I want to find an image that speaks to the rapid changes of aging. For 40 years, I have enjoyed thickly settled jet black hair, and now all of a sudden, it is as though the top of my head is being gentrified. All these little white clusters popping up all over the place. "I think your hair is beautiful," says my 5-year-old, "like the color of a princess's poop." This comparison is certainly surprising, evocative, and tonally complex. But unless that princess has been taking iron supplements, it is also totally inaccurate. And yet I appreciate the absurdity of my 5-year-old suggestion and how it frees my mind to traverse the surreal. It's never easy coming up with an image that works on both a literal and figurative level. And I'm looking for something that is both visually accurate, but also reflective of my resistance to the fact that my youthfulness is beginning to fade. "My hair's not gray," I suddenly say. "It's Dorian gray." My daughters look at me like I'm an idiot. And even though there isn't anything visual about that line, there is something about the mixture of playfulness and seriousness that I like. I've always considered myself young at heart, but now my body is starting to tell a different story. And later, when I sneak into the bathroom and use tweezers to pluck a white hair or 3, I can't help but recognize what feels like an ancient literary pull, a deep and existential tug. This next one's called The Marks We Leave Behind. My 5-year-old loves to pee in the bathwater. Even if I force her to sit on the toilet before she gets into the bath, she will squeeze her root chakras just before she's done, peeing so that upon climbing into the tub, she can release the remains of whatever urine she'd secretly stashed in her bladder. I tell her that this is gross. She tells me that she doesn't care. I'm convinced that there is something primal about this ritual, her way of marking her territory so that her sister doesn't try to take a bath with her. And yet, despite its somewhat animalistic nature, I can't help but also see something literary in it. Whenever I begin a new poem, one of the first things I do is list all of my most private and vulnerable thoughts related to the subject. In some ways, this is about marking my territory, filtering big ideas through a personal lens in order to help me locate a more distinct voice. But in other ways, like a 5-year-old peeing in the bathwater, it's about forcing myself to sit in my own mess, making sure that I'm writing from the perspective of my most imperfect and human self. But it's one thing to mark your own territory, another to mark someone else's. Last night, I was at my desk writing comments all over my students' stories when my 5-year-old wandered on over, took a big old swig from my can of seltzer, rinsed vigorously, then slowly spat said swig back into the can before walking away with it. "That was mine," I said. "Not anymore," she said. And although I was a little bitter and a bit disgusted, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was essentially doing the same thing to my students' papers. My students had entrusted me with their original stories, and here I was vigorously marking them up with my red pen, contaminating their ideas with my own thoughts and suggestions. Surely tomorrow, when I returned their work to them, they would look up their marked up stories and think, "That was mine." And I would just walk away to the other side of the room and say, "Not anymore." I looked over at my 5-year-old and told her that I wanted my seltzer back. She let out a loud, unapologetic burp, then walked on over and placed the empty can on my desk. And as I returned my attention to the stack of stories in front of me, I tried to remember that there was a difference between offering critical feedback and tainting my students' sense of ownership. That my job was not to mark up their stories, but to help them make a mark of their own. I'm going to read one final one here. It's called "Why Write When There Are Thousands of People Out There Not Reading Your Work?" We were at the home of some friends when I found myself in a conversation with their 6-year-old son. "My dad told me that you're a writer," he said. "I am," I said. "Then let me ask you something," he said. "How come I've never read anything you wrote?" "That's a good question," I said. "Think about it," he said. "Right now, there are thousands of people out there who aren't reading any of your books." He shook his head and walked away, leaving me all alone in the kitchen. I grabbed a slice of lukewarm pizza and started laughing to myself. I'd recently published a small book of short prose and was well aware of all those people out there not reading it. And it got me thinking of one of the 2 recurring dreams that I'd been having as of late, which involved me walking into a bookstore to give a reading and seeing that there was only one person in the audience. This, in fact, actually happened to me once, and although I laughed it off at the time, cracked some joke about the sound of one hand clapping, it was one of those moments that remind you of the fine line between humility and humiliating. We left our friend's house shortly afterwards, and although it was getting late, we decided to give our 5-year-old a bath. Giving our 5-year-old a bath is always a bit of a production. She likes to bring trays of Tupperware into the tub with her and pretend like she's the star of some warped Disney film. "Look," I overheard her say at one point as I was walking by, "I know that you think you killed my parents, but I have news for you. It is I who poisoned your parents." Then she started laughing, this evil, maniacal laugh. I have no idea what the premise of her story was, but I wasn't about to ask, because if she knew that I was eavesdropping, she would have immediately stopped the show. And as I stood in the hallway listening in, I started thinking about the other recurring dream that I'd been having as of late. In this one, I'm taking a shower, and when I step out, I realize that there's a full crowd of people waiting for me to read. I walk up to the podium, and not only do I not have my book with me, I'm not wearing any pants. I'd always assumed that this was simply the converse of the first dream. Rather than showing up with something to say and finding no one there, I show up with nothing to say and find everyone there. But as I listened to my daughter play so freely in the bath, her imagination wandering in the most surprising and delightful of ways, I wondered if this dream was actually about the tension between the pleasures of writing and the pressures of being a writer. On my better days, I'm able to compartmentalize the two. But whenever I've sat down to write lately, I found myself worrying about book sales and Goodreads ratings, about the reviews that people were writing and the reviews that people weren't writing. My 5-year-old was starting to sing some song that could only be described as a ballad to her bum. I couldn't make out all the lyrics, though, because she was laughing so hard as she belted it out. And I realized that if I wanted to reclaim the pleasures of writing, I couldn't worry about all those thousands of people not reading my books, because that's not why we write. We write for that single fleeting moment, as Mercy Cunningham says, when we feel alive. Thank you very much.
Welcome to the show For the Love of Words. I'm Priscilla Almquist Olsen, your host, and today we are by Zoom meeting Elizabeth and Lily Jackson, songwriters, musicians, and their mother Mary, who has had a big part, I'm sure, in their journey. So welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having us. Hello.
So Mary, tell me a little bit how all this got started. I'm sure you had a lot to do with it.
Well, they're the voice. Absolutely. They have been in acting and music and things pretty much their whole life, and instrument playing. They're both multiple instrumentalists, but musical theater has played a really big, important part in their lives and our lives. And they were raised on orchestral music and lots of variety of music. Let's see, praise and worship. They've done a lot of that in church growing up. And then in 2017, I had my first children's book published. And my friend and co-writer, Thornton Klein, wrote 10 songs for the first book. And the girls went into the studio and recorded those songs. And they're on Apple Music or in iTunes and wherever music is. And so after the book got published, I think we recorded that in 2016. Mm-hmm. And then after the book got published, then when we would go do events, like the release and other things, the library and other events, the girls would sing the songs in public. So it's kind of sort of how it all started there. And then they recorded a praise and worship song called You Shine Through. And that was released in 2019, I do believe, mm-hmm. in May of 2019. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with a certain producer. And then at that point, the girls were singing in different venues and churches, and we were on TV and radio and kind of doing that hopping around thing you do when you're releasing stuff. And, then I'm not sure when we recorded and released in 2022, Open Win. Mm-hmm. And the summer before in 2021, Elizabeth and Thornton and I wrote that song together. And then it didn't get out into the world until a year later, because it took us a while to write that song. Mm-hmm. And kind of find the melody and what we wanted and song title and those various kinds of things. And so it's really just kind of grown from there. And, the girls have participated in, we have an event here called Hendersonville's Got Talent. And so they've made it to the top round and performed in front of like 15,000 people. And
wow.
Yeah. So, and that was when they were much younger, actually. So, mm-hmm. But, they can definitely tackle the stage. That's for sure. So, and they're both in school. Elizabeth's in grad school and Lily's in undergrad. Mm-hmm. And Elizabeth is, and I'm talking for you. I'm sorry, you can talk for yourself, okay. But that's kind of sort of how all this came about, was through my advocacy work and the books and their love of music, mm-hmm. and starting to sing together. And Elizabeth has written the other two songs, and she did those in 2016, I guess, when she was 16 years old, and written the composition for it as well. It's just been mastered by the music producer. But it's been exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah.
Well, it certainly sounds like it's a wonderful journey, and I know that you're located just outside of Nashville.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth, how has that influenced your songwriting?
It's interesting. Growing up outside of Nashville, one would assume that we would be all over the country music scene, but it's kind of like how mom grew up around Disney World. You don't like doing all the touristy stuff.
Yeah, I know.
No, I do love country music, but we were very much influenced by folk and musical theater and then rock and a bunch of things. So our sound or genre, I think, is a hodgepodge of a bunch of things.
Yeah.
It's been hard to define exactly what our sound is. I'd like to say we're kind of trying to make our own sound, independent genre, I guess. But growing up around a lot of musicians has been really cool. And I don't think I've really, at least me personally, I haven't really um, digested that until recently because a lot of my childhood friends, their parents played music or they tuned up guitars for some fairly famous people. And it's been really cool to be around that
So
our whole life.
Nashville is really encourages people to pursue their musical interests and develop their skills. And Lily, what instrument do you play?
I play flute. I'm self-taught on piano and I play violin and cello.
Oh my
Those
goodness.
those
Wow.
are the instruments I play.
And which one do you prefer playing? And on the videos, which instruments are you going to be playing?
Well, in the future, I'd like to play either my flute or cello in one of our songs.
Mhm.
And but overall, I prefer my flute.
Yes, the flute is wonderful and it's so uplifting and inspiring, but so is the cello with its deep, mellow tones. So I can see why you like them both. And how about you, Elizabeth? What instrument do you play?
I started on clarinet when I was 11 and I still play today. That's what I'm doing in grad school. I love the clarinet. I would love to put it on some of our future pieces that we put out. I'm self-taught on guitar. That's what I predominantly write on, and I play a little piano. And I've learned to play almost every wind instrument, one from pure interest, but also from my degree path in undergrad. So I want to bring that into the scene a little bit more, but clarinet's probably where my strong suit is mostly. If instruments outside of the voice or things like that.
So tell me, Elizabeth, what was your undergraduate degree in?
Instrumental music education,
Okay, and now your graduate work? What's that?
music performance.
For?
For the clarinet specifically, but I have an assistantship, so I'm getting to teach and do a lot of administrative work.
Uh-huh.
Very fun.
Well, you seem to be very, very happy in your
I am. We've been very blessed.
Yes.
Yeah, and Lily is at school for
I'm at Lipscomb for animation. It's not music, but that's what I'm doing.
So you have multiple skills. So you're studying animation, and would you
Yes.
you want to go to LA eventually, or?
I want to eventually, I am currently writing my own stories as well, and I would love to eventually turn them into TV shows and share biblical messages through fantasy stories. But I also want to do that through our music, and I do a lot of stuff.
Well, you are both creative geniuses. Now, do you get that from your mother or from your father or just from your friends and the people in Nashville, and or is it all a combination?
I think it's definitely a combination.
Definitely. Mom is very talented, and she was a dancer and also a singer when she was younger and stuff.
Don't let her
And-
fool you. She's a
Yeah.
mastermind.
And then our dad does not
People
like
can.
our dad doesn't like to admit it, but he was also very talented too.
He's very
He's a
creative.
drummer. Yeah, he's a drummer in
Yeah.
high school. He's really good, actually. He's got a really good ear for music, and so I think raising the girls, and now I have my son too. He's 10, but I use the creative arts mostly in their lives. You know, I tried to have a balance between the arts and then academics and athletics for them. And I'm, you know, the same for my son. I think it makes a real great balance for children and, you know, offering them throughout their life, you know, when they were having challenges or going through something, you know, traumas or whatever it was in their lives, you know, it's we've used writing and dancing and singing and instruments and whatever artistic we could do because it really allows. We're all creative beings. We really need a channel for that. And but for a child, it allows them to be able to process in a very healthy way, and it has no boundaries. And it's like they can't get in trouble, you know, singing and dancing and drawing and writing and you know those kind of things. It allows them to, I mean, I guess they could get in trouble, but it allows them it allows them really to express in a very safe way. You know,
Yes.
paper doesn't judge, music doesn't judge. You know, they already live in a world they feel so judged, you know, for their emotions. But it's, I think it just was, it's been so instrumental in both their lives. Elizabeth was extremely shy. And I know I made it funny. I didn't even realize it. But you know, she writing was her tool, and then for Lily, art was her tool. Like she, at 18 months, she began drawing, and it was very. I mean, even at 2, she was drawing very detailed. And I thought, as a mom, I was like, "Oh, yay, she's busy, and it's good for her." I had no idea how this was all going to turn out, and so.
So tell me, what, Elizabeth and Lily, tell me what event that you performed at did you like the most? Did you feel inspired? Did you feel that this was a very special event in your life, you know, a milestone?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have 2 in my mind.
Okay.
Do you care if I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, the first, or guess you could put these 2 into one. We performed at the Bluebird Cafe in Nashville twice this past summer, and to be in a space that is intended for people to come and just want to network and meet other budding artists at a like legendary spot.
Yeah.
But just to come and listen to art, it's a listening room, and you don't get to play at a bunch of places like that where people are intently listening to you and not just your music, but who you are as a person. And I loved that for both of us. I know don't want to speak for you, but I know you
No,
did
it
too.
was so cool.
Because that's something that I love to do. I love knowing the story behind people's work, and it's such a beautiful art form. So
Yes.
that, and then also we performed at a fall festival
Yeah,
in Gallatin.
that's the one I was thinking of.
Oh yeah.
This past October, and that was a huge festival. I was very overwhelmed. I was like, "Are we going to be able to do this?"
Yeah,
What?
so it's like it was this huge, it's an older part of town, so there's all these historical buildings around, and there's just people walking by in tents, and we're just this big stage in the corner. And we're just more of like background sounds, but like we started singing some of our songs, 2 of them, when people just got really quiet.
Yeah,
And it was
specifically. So go ahead. Go
no-
ahead. Sorry.
yeah, specifically we've started singing a
Part.
song called The Parting Glass.
It's a traditional Irish tune to like say goodbye and farewell and good health, and it's a cappella. And we really like to end our sets with that because we like to say it's a fond farewell to people. And I was not expecting the crowd to go silent, but it was like an almost not an eerie quiet, but it was like, whoa, everybody's listening. Like it opened a different type of listening space. It was a really cool experience to be able to do that.
It was very surreal. It was really cool. But yeah.
Okay, Lily, I have a question for you. We're going to play some videos of your music, and can you tell us about one of them and how it originated?
Open Wind was our first music video, and our theater director that we had been doing theater with since at least I was 9 did the recording for us with his son.
He's the videographer.
And we did it over at his house, which was really fun. And he put his magic on it, and it was really fun. It was just like, do this, and we did it, and it just came to life. And it was really cool. I had never acted on film like that before, so that was fun for both of us and stuff. But yeah, it was a cool experience. I think, didn't we do it all in one day?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 or 2 days, and then one of your theater buds got to be your
Yeah.
boyfriend in the video.
It was
Now,
the
what about
guy.
the another video, Elizabeth? One that you wrote.
Breathe In.
Breathe In, our most recent song, that video was such a fun one to film. We
Yeah.
loved bringing people together to do that, which is the whole point of the song that I wrote back in 2016. I originally wanted it to be a lullaby, which is not a lullaby, but it's intended to be a song to help people, to put them at ease if they're struggling with anxiety or anything. And now it's turned into the first thing we forget to do in life when we get stressed is to breathe. And so, and I'm constantly reminded to do that when I get stressed. And just to come as you are. And I found that if I can remember my foundations and who I am and just clear my head, I can go forward easier than if I was all scrambled. Now, I'm not perfect at it. You know, we all struggle with it,
Yeah.
but the song is about to breathe in and remember who you are, no matter who you are. And it's a beautiful piece, at least in my mind. It's turned into something much bigger
Yeah.
than what was given to me at the beginning of it. It's turned into something that's bigger than us. And
So your music is very personal, isn't it?
yes.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. It's I think maybe as I age and I continue to songwrite, it'll be easier to give the music away. As in, like, if somebody wanted me to write a song for them, I feel like it'd be more like that. Mom has asked, like, how I would feel about selling my songs, and I have such a hard time with that concept, just because music to me and writing has always been such a personal thing. It's just there's so much depth to it. It's hard for
With
me.
your heart and soul. It is really, if you want to know who Elizabeth is, just listen to their music. So, or read her
I tend
lyrics.
to wear my heart on my sleeve.
Yeah.
But it's just, I love sharing music with people. It's one of my passions. It's a reason why I decided to go into music education, because I have such a passion for it, and I'd love to share that passion with other people. And not everybody's going to be as passionate, which is fine. But if anything, just to instill an appreciation of music in other people, something like that. Just to bring people together, because we need more light in this world.
We do
That's
indeed.
all.
We do indeed. And your music brings that light. And obviously, your message is needed today more than ever. So I really think that you're going to be giving us many messages in the future that'll help people. But I imagine that you derive some of your images from nature too, don't you?
That's definitely how we were raised.
Yes.
It's something that Mom loves, and it's especially that scene in our latest video, because we filmed it out in nature. And it's just, when I think of breathing in and just existing, I'm out in nature. I'm not in, say, our house in a cardboard box. I'm out, like, in the forest. I'm at the beach, in the mountains. It's just nature. To me, it's God's artwork, and it's so inspirational.
Very much.
And Lily, do you see other aspects in your music besides nature? What else do you see?
I mean, I see colors a lot with our music, and it changes with every song and the feeling it gives.
Uh-huh.
The album covers have been,
Yeah,
the album covers have been based on whatever color they see with the music. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we're going to leave it there, and we're going to listen to your music. That'll be attached at the end now of this interview. So I want to thank you so much. Your enthusiasm is just contagious. So I imagine that when you perform, people just really are with you, heart and soul. Isn't that right, Mary?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I still cry sometimes when they sing. Yeah. Their harmonies, and it's like, oh, those are my babies, and so it brings a tear to my eye. Sometimes we just do things here at the house. I think like a month or so ago, we had a Saturday night in the living room, just the five of us, and it turned into a Broadway musical night. So they went through all the Broadway musicals, and
Oh,
it
I
was
remember
just
that.
yeah. And so some of those ballads really get me, but I'm like, girls, we got to do a live. Just TikTok, let's just TikTok it, or whatever. But they have ability to sing so many different varieties, and I'm just really super proud of both of them. I really am, and I just I think them sharing their gift is a real gift.
Yes, and it's wonderful that they can share their musical life with each other and with the public. So hopefully you will be on this journey for a long, long time, and best of luck in your getting your degrees. And we're going to really enjoy hearing your music. So thank you again for joining us on For the Love of Words. And we
Thank
know,
you so
and
much.
we know that you love words
Yes.
too, besides your musical tones. It's the words that convey and the music that enhances those words. So thank you. All the
Thank
best.
you.
Bye now.
Bye.
What's wrong? Are you okay?
Oh, my boyfriend's going off to college soon, and it's pretty far away. I'm just kind of worried for him.
Hey, do you remember that thing that I did last year for my boyfriend?
Yeah, I do.
Let's do that when I get home.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. I love you.
Open when you need a new song. Open when you forget where you belong. Open when you wanna feel closer to me. Make no mistake, we can't fool ourselves. Nothing we can do about the distance. The miles between us, a part of me is missing. A road you will alter for every day we've been together. Open each one when you think of me. And the love between us. Open when you need a new song. Open when you forget where you belong. Open when you wanna feel closer to me. Words you might need written from my heart, sealed with my kiss while we're apart. Learn to open when, open when. Never said love would be easy. I'm sending you a part of me to make you smile, to feel my love constantly. Oh, when we're finally in each other's arms, we'll pick up where we both left off, as if time and space were never